And we are now live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This meeting of Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference, and town staff are available throughout the meeting if council members have any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. I'll now call this meeting to order. Start with the land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territories of the Mississaugas, more specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Members of council, does anybody have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Moving on to notice of motion. Oh, let's give it a second. Councilor Henry says she has no sound. Sterling, any tips?
He's troubleshooting in the chat.
Yep.
Should we call a recess, Chair, until Councilor Henry can come back?
We can, or we can just hang out for 5 minutes.
Just sit here, or yeah, okay.
We'll give it a minute, and then if we need to, we'll call a quick recess.
I'm just trying to find the call-in information for her, if that helps.
I do apologize, colleagues. I'm on the computer and have no sound, so I've had to come in through my telephone. Apologies.
Okay, that's fine. We can hear you. Okay, we'll continue. Moving on to motions. We have, oops, sorry, wrong screen. The tilling of the Lower Duffins Creek wetland, moved by Councillor Dias, second by Councillor Crawford. I'll turn it over to Councillor Dias.
Thank you very much, Mayor Collier. So I think it's pretty obvious we've had discussions prior to this about the impact of our wetlands and what they do for us. Do you want me to read this motion, members of council? Do you want me to go through it or?
Up to you, Regional Councillor Dias. It's fine either way.
Go ahead if you'd like to read the whole thing or just the wherefores.
Okay, I'll read it. So whereas Ajax Council, we passed a motion on November 9th opposing the development of the provincially significant Lower Duffins Creek wetland and worked closely with environmental groups, First Nations stakeholders and community members to successfully halt plans to pave over the 57 acres of wetland for a massive warehouse development. And whereas Norwal reported on November 4th that approximately 90% of the Lower Duffins Creek wetland in the Bailey Street and Squires Beach Road area had been cleared and tilled. And whereas the issue is under investigation by the Toronto Region Conservation Authority as the activity is in contravention to Ontario Regulation 166/06 under the Conservation Authorities Act, which states no person may change or interfere in any way with a wetland without the permission of the Conservation Authority. And whereas Callie DeRoca, chief of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, released a statement on November 21st, expressing the shock of the MSIFN at the reckless and unnecessary destruction and calling for the protection of this significant part of our ecosystem. And whereas revisions to the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System have been proposed under Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, which would result in a tilled site no longer being considered a wetland. And whereas Ajax has serious concerns regarding any devaluing of protections for Ontario's wetlands and has been a proponent of wetlands as exemplified by the Kerrison Road Wetland Restoration Project, which has expanded marsh and swamp wetland habitat, decommissioned old farm ponds and associated infrastructure, restored and stabilized existing stream bank erosion, and managed invasive species. So therefore, be it resolved that Ajax Council strongly opposes the blatant and purposeful damage of any wetland. Ajax Council joins Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation in its shock regarding destruction of the Lower Duffins Creek wetland. Ajax Council opposes proposed revisions to the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System, which changes the classification of a wetland after tillage. And a copy of this motion is to be sent to Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honorable David Piccini, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Patrice Barnes, MPP Ajax, and Honorable Peter Bethlenfalvy, Minister of Finance and MPP Pickering, John Henry, Durham Chair, Kevin Nash, Pickering Mayor, and John McKenzie, the CAO of the Toronto Conservation Authority. So I think, I mean, that's reading what we've written down and what this resolution and how important this resolution is. I mean, we have some interference. I don't know if someone's speaking or not. Do you want me to make my comments now, Mayor?
Yeah, you are free to speak to the motion.
Okay. So I think this pretty well outlines how important this wetland was, other than the fact that many, many residents from Ajax and Pickering fought to protect this wetland for months, and they were successful in that. And the people spoke, the people understand how important these wetlands are as they clean our air, they clean our water, and they act as giant sponges to protect us from flooding. And I think that's key. All of these things, yes, we could do by you know, putting in the greatest technology that there is, the best technology and the best engineering possible when we're developing. However, Mother Nature tends to win, and the costs are astronomical on the tax base when you have to start to maintain and replace it. So I feel very strongly that these wetlands have to be protected. 56% of the wetlands in Ontario are already gone and developed on. So it's really critical in these times with climate change that we protect what we have left. And I always go back to that old saying that you need a balance in life, and that balance does look after our overall health. So I'll open it up to any other comments. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford, as a seconder, do you wish to speak to this?
Yes, I mean, it should be no surprise that Ajax is coming forward with this motion. We felt this way in, man, I think it was 2019 when we did this. Councillor Dies, I'm not 100% sure, when the MZOs, yeah, 2020, okay, when the MZOs were newly kind of formed, and then it was put on these lands. So it shouldn't be any shock to anyone that we are being consistent with how we feel about this particular area and the wetlands. And it's our job and duty to be consistent and protect it.
Next, Councillor Lee.
Just very quickly, and thank you, Regional Councillor Dies and Crawford, for bringing this. You know, they've already spoke on the environmental and the political of this was brought up previously, and you know, we fought back, and thankfully it was, you know, the MZO was removed. Now it seems the province is trying a different path to, you know, clear out this land. I just want to take this from the lens of, you know, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, Chief Kelly LaRocca, have been pretty consistent in saying that, you know, don't touch this land. It's important. And it's always funny that we try and say how important truth and reconciliation is going forward, except when it actually comes to listening to the requests of our First Nation partners. So if for no other reason, you know, they've made it very clear that they don't want this land touched. And I think that should be good enough, let alone all the other reasons that Councillor Dyes and Crawford had led forward. So fully in support of this motion, and I hope to see this unanimously supported. Thank you, Chair.
I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Okay, recorded vote's been called. Does any other member of council wish to speak to this?
I would, Mayor Collier.
Please go ahead.
Through the chair, I've spoken to staff. I'm playing catch up here and I do apologize, colleagues. I just received access to my email on Friday. I'm playing catch up on this issue, but I did have some questions that went to staff and staff was very great about answering in a timely fashion. So the first thing that I've asked staff is that does Ajax Council have any legal authority or governing rights over land in another municipality? My understanding is the answer is no. Is that correct, Mayor?
Let's see, is Mr. Romanowski on the call or a member of our planning department?
Steph Andis, I'm here for Mr. Romanowski.
Please go ahead.
In terms of authority over developments or any sort of applications in a neighboring municipality, if the application is within 1 kilometer of our town border, then we are circulated. We are provided the ability to comment on it. So the town of Ajax would be a commenting body, just like any other commenting body. And the town of Ajax would also have the ability to appeal a decision if we didn't agree with a decision on an application in a neighboring municipality, if we have already participated via comments.
Now, does that, through the chair, does that refer to if there is a plan in place, or does that only if there's a plan in place, or is it in reference to if we are just upset by something and want to make a comment as a municipality to another municipality?
So
I'm failing to see where we have any governing power in Pickering.
So through the chair, when it comes to planning matters, what I'm speaking to is about active planning applications or development applications. Other matters are perhaps council's purview, but I am only speaking to active development applications and perhaps.
Excellent. So through the chair, you are referring to planning only, correct? And there's no planning motion on this property at this current time, correct?
I am referring to planning, and perhaps Christy McLarty would like to add to my comments.
Ms. McLarty?
Through the chair, I think what Ms. Andis is referring to is when there's a planning comment, but it's always in council's purview to take any position that they wish to take on any motion.
I'll add to that just our next motion, which talks about Bill 23, but also the Carruthers Headwaters. And even though it's not in Ajax, it's certainly, if developed and there is no plan on it yet, could have serious impacts on us, as could this wetland. So yes, I believe absolutely it's within our purview to discuss and make comment, which we have before several times.
I'm aware, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, to staff, I would like to know, have we, as a council, reached out to the new Pickering Council, especially the 2 new councillors that oversee the land we're speaking of, and asked for, giving them a chance to state their opinion? I understand the history between our previous Ajax Council and the previous Pickering Council, but we're dealing with 2 new councils now. And I'm asking, have we given them the opportunity to comment on this prior to our comments?
I'm not aware, but perhaps Ms. McClarty or Ms. Cooper?
Through the chair, no, we have not reached out. And unless we had some sort of direction from council to do so, I don't think that we would have proactively reached out to those two councillors.
Understood. And the motion as it stands, could we go back to the number 1 of the motion? Has it been removed, or is it, I'm seeing 3 and 4 on the screen. So through the chair, my only opposition to this at this point, aside from the points that I've already mentioned, would be the wording of number 1. Ajax Council strongly opposes the blatant and purposeful damage of any wetlands. The word blatant and purposeful, I am concerned with that wording. It's very strong. And through the chair to staff, I've not seen a TRCA report. I'm understanding through staff that it has not been finalized or concluded and might be in legal proceeding. Is that correct?
Well, I'll get Councillor Dyes, who sits on the TRCA board, to speak to that, if you can, please.
Please.
And thank you. That is correct. The matter is under investigation, and a legal process has been started. And that was a recent update.
Yeah.
So I have to say that the wetland, basically where you see under number 3, where the evaluation system in which we grade wetlands, and this is a provincially significant wetland, it changes the classification of the wetland as well. So if it's been tilled, basically it can be developed. This tilling happened around the same time as the province brought out all of these recommendations.
23.
Okay, so through the chair to Councillor Dyes, I do understand that, but we have not seen a concluded investigation or outcome in the court system, correct?
Let me take that one.
It has commenced.
I did reach out to John McKenzie at TRCA, and I have an email right here dated November 22nd. We're continuing to do everything within our legislative ability to address the issue, including the recent execution of a search warrant to assess impact and obtain additional evidence as part of the investigation, and initiating charges under the Conservation Authorities Act. The charges speak to restoration of the wetland by the owner, and the cost for such restoration will be informed by TRCA's various guides and standards, which are based on science and our lengthy experience creating and restoring wetlands. So yes, they have done their inspection and they have initiated charges through the courts.
And Mayor, does it speak to in there whether or not the damage to the land was done by the property owner or that of the tenant of the land?
No, it does not speak to that.
Okay, so then, Mayor, through my concern with this motion is rests in 1, with the wording of blatant and purposeful, because we don't know who did the damage. We have no proof or evidence of who did the damage. And at this point, it seems a little bit strongly worded. I would propose an amendment taking out blatant and purposeful. And you can tell me, sir, when that time for an amendment could come.
That's right now. And you need a seconder. Do we have a seconder to remove the words blatant and purposeful with this amendment? Okay, that amendment fails for lack of a seconder. You still have the floor, Councillor Henry.
Those are my only questions.
Okay. Does any other member of council wish to speak to this? Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. I must be looking at a different motion, because I don't see how really this is relevant to whether this property is in a neighboring municipality or not. I think this is a strong position. I thank Regional Councillor Dyes and Crawford for putting this motion forward to reiterate the position of Ajax Council regarding the damage, the destruction of wetlands, and also the, I guess, the dismissing of the beliefs of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island. So I don't have any questions. I do just want to say thank you for the leadership on this to Regional Councillors Dyes and Crawford. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further? I'll just speak to it quickly, maybe not quickly. I absolutely believe this is blatant and purposeful. And 2 years ago, November, we initiated, we just came out and said, this is wrong. And over a dozen environmental agencies agreed with us, Environmental Defense, a number of others, and really took this on, including the entire Greenbelt Council resigning at the city, at the province, and a number of other things. I mean, David Crombie resigned on this. A number of things happened over this. Dozens of environmental groups, the Indigenous communities, tens of thousands of residents wrote letters and signed, what's it called, petition against this. There was no misunderstanding, and the province walked back the MZO they'd issued. There was no misunderstanding by anybody that this is not only a provincially significant wetland, but this is a PSW that scored a perfect, I believe, 150 on the scale, a very important one. And there was no misunderstanding by anybody. And there's no way that we could possibly say this wasn't blatant and purposeful, in my opinion. The TRCA has done their investigation and they are pursuing legal action, what they still can with what's left of the Conservation Act that hasn't been taken away from them through Bill 108. And Bill 23, I find it very coincidental that at the same time Bill 23 is announced and they say if a wetland has been tilled, it is no longer a wetland, and suddenly this wetland is tilled. I don't know. Coincidence, perhaps, but I don't believe so. I think it's absolutely within our mandate and our purview for us to take a strong position on this, as we have before, reiterating everything we've said before to the province. And our next motion we have coming up does the same. This is a very important wetland to this municipality. It is the last and largest that is, I think, south of the 401, and it performs very important function as far as the Duffins Creek and all the infrastructure and everything down there. So I absolutely will be supporting this. I understand a recorded vote has been called.
Okay, on the motion, in favor or opposed, Regional Councillor Dyes.
In favor.
Councillor Henry.
In favor.
Regional Councillor Lee.
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Bauer.
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford.
In favor.
And Mayor Collier.
In favor. That passes unanimously. Moving on to our next item. Requesting more time and consultation on Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act 2022. Yeah, moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Lee. Councillor Dyes, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Again, I'm not going to read this one. It's long and involved, but very, very important. And I feel very strongly. I know not all the information has yet come in for Bill 23. It is extremely complicated, and our staff did cover pretty much everything they could in giving us some indication of the impact of this. So, you know, it amends the Conservation Authorities Act and basically takes away all of their powers, particularly when it comes to making, you know, commenting on applications and site plans, which means, you know, they have no say in protecting any environmentally sensitive land from being developed. There's changes to inclusionary zoning. There's new legislation that supports growth and housing. And I understand that there's a crisis in housing. We all see that. But I don't think there's anybody in the municipalities here in Durham region, particularly down in the south, that don't continue to grow and build houses. So I haven't seen a gap in that provision of housing. The gap really exists in affordability. So what the plan is now, from what I've heard in some of these areas, is to continue to build suburban sprawl. And we know that we cannot afford that, and that people buying cannot afford to buy those homes. So we have to look at more ways of providing a choice in housing, and that is the issue. So for Ajax, the province has set a housing target of 79,000 units. So, and they've also taken away some of our powers to collect development charges from the developer, which pays for development. So that development pays for growth. So those costs will be borne on the taxpayers. And there are many, many other things as well. I know some of you will want to speak to, but I think it's, the cost that we're going to bear is significant, in the millions and millions of dollars. And that will increase your taxes for the next 20 years. So I think it's really important that we consider this, and we give a message, even though, the bill passed royal assent today. We did not become a council until we were inaugurated yesterday, and we need to make a comment. I'm getting many questions and concerns expressed from the public. So I'm very pleased to see this motion come forward, and thank staff for all of their support. And I'd call a recorded vote as well, please.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford, I saw your hand, but I'm going to ask Councillor Lee as a seconder if he'd like to speak first.
Thank you, Chair, and I absolutely would. I'd like to speak up first on the cost. Councillor Dyes kind of referred to it previously. The cost on this is going to be astronomical. I think Markham had it in almost $1 billion. Mississauga had almost $1 billion. Obviously, Ajax is not as big, but the property tax increase that will result of removing these DCs can't be spoken for. In fact, I can't wait to see the staff report about how much it's going to cost Ajax, because I don't imagine it's going to be cheap, and it's through no fault of our own. We were just all of a sudden going to be told this is what you will have to make up the difference. But I do know that this theory that we are sitting on large reserves and just sitting on them is obviously not true. We've all been through the budget cycle. Our Director of Finance has gone through numerous times saying this money is spoken for. These are the various projects. Here is our 1, 5, 10-year forecast for this money. So it's not like we're just sitting on piles of money and just hoarding it. It's all been spoken for. And now it's being cut dramatically, and I don't know where the money's going to come from. Actually, sorry, I do know where the money's going to come from. The only place municipalities can get the money from is through property taxes. That's number one. Number two, the affordable housing, which again, Councillor Dyes spoke on it as well. If there was something in this bill speaking directly to affordable housing, then I would kind of understand where this government is coming from. But right now, it's almost like a handshake deal between them and the developers, saying that through this bill, developers will obviously create more affordable housing, though I've seen no indication of that. In fact, the removal of the inclusionary zoning bylaw speaks pretty much differently, speaks to the opposite, saying that we're not even going to set minimums of affordable housing targets or affordable to your developments. And that is incredibly troublesome because, again, as someone who I think I'm the only one on this council who does not own property, I'm renting right now, affordable housing sounds great right now and would be very hopeful to me. And finally, I want to speak just to the democratic process of this. We're seeing time and time again where comments are being shut down before legislation's put in place. I understand there is an urgency to this. Again, I'm a renter. I can't wait to eventually get into the housing market. But to rush through something like this that affects the entire province, every municipality, and I'm sure Mayor Collier will speak to this, of the big city mayors, and I'm sure most of the rural ones, I haven't seen any municipality in favor of this. So the entire province is saying to you loud and clear that we can't do this under this time frame, under these restrictions, then perhaps you want to open it up and give us more time to digest it, take those comments, and amend the bill. But instead, they forced it through, and now I have no idea what the future looks like in terms of housing. But right now, I'm more concerned about our taxpayers who are going to feel the brunt of this. And quite honestly, the mayor of Aurora put this through, and I would love to do this at the town. During the property tax season, I would love a component that just shows the increase as a result of this bill. And we can call it the Ontario Provincial Government, Bill 23, whatever you want to call it. But I want to make sure they know that it wasn't my choice to raise property taxes 4, 5, 8%. It was actually, we had no choice but to make ends meet. So you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this. Thank you, Chair, for letting me speak.
Absolutely. We did do that a couple of terms ago when the government brought out, I think it was when they raised the minimum wage. And we all had to, and we had to do a big tax hit, and we did show that as a separate line item, exactly what the impact was. So I do agree with that. Councillor Crawford, you were next.
Yes, the mere fact that Ontario has had the least amount of flooding in our province is due to the fact that we have a conservation authority that is the gatekeeper on keeping our province safe from flooding. Taking away that authority is a very dangerous game that we're playing. And I do not think I don't understand, except for the fact that it would slow down the purpose of this bill. Very coincidentally, that 6 of the developers bought Greenbelt property at a decreased property rate. And those very same properties are now been released through the Greenbelt. Coincidentally, probably not, but it really reeks of lack of transparency. And to think that he thinks we're going to wear this is so very wrong, because if I have to shout front and stand on top of my already paid for house roof, I will, because I am not wearing this, and I will be very vocal and telling people where this extra money that has to be found, because you can't put 10,000 extra houses. I don't know where that is coming from, but you cannot put 10,000 extra houses in a community without upgrading the infrastructure to support that build. So I'm not really, I have no questions. This is really just my soapbox that I'm standing on, because this entire bill infuriates me 100%, because it is not accomplishing what we really need to have done in this province. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer, did I see your hand, or were you just adjusting your screen?
No, I was just pointing my finger at Regional Councillor Lee because he said what I was going to say.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Mayor.
Tyler Moran, you were next, and then Councillor Henry.
Hi, sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I try and, within my job and focusing on exactly what I try and do for the residents and being a local councillor, try and simplify something as big as this. I'm very happy that this motion has come forward, and I will be supporting it. When I look at our residents paying the amount of taxes they are, and this council trying to keep service levels as high as we can, and going through line by line by line to keep those two as balanced as we possibly can, that's already a challenge. And what we have coming up with inflation and everything else, the cost of living, which is inflation, that's already in play. That's before all of a sudden they come to us and say, oh, by the way, there's going to be this removal of the DC charges. And all of a sudden we get into the game of paying for, as Regional Councillor Crawford has talked about the last few days, about paying for roads and curbs and sidewalks. The money isn't there for us. We've been trying to keep the budget as responsible as we can, keeping service levels as high. So that's a huge, huge concern of mine, and it appears with my council colleagues. But that's the reason why, at a very simple level, that I'll be supporting this motion. And hopefully that can get adjusted. There will be a rollback, who knows? But thank you for your time.
Councillor Henry, you're next.
Hi, yes, Mayor, through the chair. My concern is also with the development charges, and I reiterate what the rest of council has said. An increase, to where an increase of 2.5% or higher in my first term at council, I'm not willing to wear that either, as my fellow councillors are not as well. And I would ask you, Mayor, how have your talks gone with the province, with our MPP, Patrice Barnes? How has this been spoken about? Have you had meetings about this? The development charges are the biggest issue here for me.
Yep, I was going to outline all that when I spoke at the end, but I can do that now. I'll start off by saying this is absolutely in line with these same recommendations that came out of Ontario Big City Mayors. which is the 29 of us over 100,000 population, representing about 70-something% of the province. So we are all on the same page. I actually spoke with MPP Barnes yesterday for a second time, and my comments to her, and as well as the letter that is going out later this afternoon in writing outlining my comments, is we're all on the same page. We're trying to do the same thing. We don't oppose building more houses, but what we oppose is, finding out about it by a Toronto Star reporter calling me on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock when I've had no consultation and no notice, asking me what I think about taking properties out of the Greenbelt. I mean, that just makes me look uninformed, and it's not helpful. We're partners. We should be working together, is what I said to our MPP. I said, reach out to us and talk to us. We know our municipalities better than you, no disrespect. We know our municipalities better than the Premier and Minister Clark. And if they had reached out to me, I would have told them that through the municipal comprehensive review process, we have already, this council, past council, took a real aggressive stance in creating more housing by allowing 5 conversions from employment to high density residential to create upwards of 17,000 new residential units in lands that are already serviced and already, like in urban neighborhoods that already have servicing. And rather than rushing to take land out of the Greenbelt, I can show you all kinds of properties right now. I've talked to our MPP about the need to do Hunt Street so we can unlock our sewer capacity and create another 7,000 or 8,000 units, as well as almost 1.2 million square feet of commercial space in our downtown. And I talked to Minister Piccini, Minister of the Environment, about how ironic is it that you're going to spend tens of billions of dollars twinning the big pipe to bring sewage 50 kilometers down from York when I can't get sewage from 2 kilometers from my downtown to that same plant. And he agreed with me. And I sent a letter to him as well. And he's agreed that the province is going to come up with some funding to help us solve and unlock our downtown. I guess to finalize my conversation with MPP Barnes, I told her yesterday, how would you like to be the MPP with probably the most units produced? And that's what you will get if you work with us, because we have the land, we have almost the zoning. I will be bringing something forward in January to help accelerate the zoning, because I don't want to wait 2 more years for the MCR to complete before we get shovels in the ground. Things will only get more expensive. I've done everything I can, and it will all go out in writing this afternoon on behalf of our council and the way the town of Ajax is looking forward. And I don't know, Councillor Henry, if you had a chance to read our comments yet on that our staff provided on Bill 23 and Bill 109. But again, this is in keeping with a lot of those as well. I hope that's answered your questions.
It has answered the majority, but I would like to speak directly to the development charges. What was the feedback with regards to that? Because we know as a municipality, we cannot, for lack of better terms, eat that as a municipality. Right. We can't, and we can't turn around after 2 years of COVID, 2 years of people losing jobs and businesses and say, you know what, now we're going to give you a tax increase. We just can't. So what was the conversation around that portion in particular?
Well, these are also my comments I was going to make. You were absolutely right. We lost our slots revenues for over a year, almost 2 years, which has severely impacted our capital budget. We were directed by the province to do an asset management plan, which we've done, which again shows that we need to do almost a 10% increase to meet what the province is demanding us to do. The province has done several things, but what I said to the MPP was, we're on the same page, but there's some unintended consequences that you may not have thought of. And this is really a download to municipalities and to Ajax 2.5%. And I gave her that figure. And I said, this is, growth needs to pay for growth. And we're going to have to go back to the taxpayers. And that's not right. So we're asking through this for a pause and consultation so we can sort of vet those unintended consequences, because we all want the same thing. But it has to be done properly, and I think it can be if we work together.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, any further on this? And I don't need to speak anymore because I've already given my my comments. I will be supporting the recommendation. Madam Clerk, I believe a recorded vote's been called, please.
Yes, thank you. On the motion, in favor or opposed, Regional Councillor Dyes,
In favor?
Councillor Henry,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Lee,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor?
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Mayor Collier.
In favor. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Clerk, can you please put the agenda back? There we go. Thank you. Moving on to let me just find my page. I have moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Tyler Morin, that bylaw number 69-2022 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its special meeting held on November 29, 2022 be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Those in favor of the confirming bylaw? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's everybody. Thank you. And finally, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Dyes, that the November 29, 2022 special meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Good
Thank
job, everyone.
you.
Collier, thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.